Hey guys, in this video I'm going to cover how to go from requirements to design, at least in part, and not covering it in full, but just at least an introduction onto how to start designing code from textual descriptions. So we've got what I literally just put together in the previous video, and we can expand on this as we go, with the intention of coming up with some rudimentary class diagram, at least, or maybe a more thoroughly thought out textual description of things that could be converted into a class diagram. So when you come to doing design from requirements, there's a surprisingly useful trick where you take nouns and verbs and you start to collect them all together and then think about how to apply them logically together, how to link them in classes so that you can then utilize that information. So the first approach is similar to when you're breaking down requirements from here. Once you've got some semblance of requirements, I'm going to focus on items and resources because it's a fairly easy and extensive thing to cover. So we'll take all of the nouns that we can see and we'll consider them either an attribute or an object. Well, a class there. Yeah. So, an attribute or a class. So if I go into here, I will make, let's just do heading 1, class, hang on. Let's go with nouns, verbs. And it seems silly, but this is the approach that you typically use, or at least that I've experienced for stripping out code from requirements. So first and foremost, we have an item, we have a player, we have world, resource, this NPC, resource nodes. So, well, we have a building, a faction, territory, AI, but that's NPC at the moment. I think that covers most of what we've got here. Obviously, we would have found more if we had done more on the actual requirements, but for now, it's going to give us a lot to work with. So when you've got things like this, you then go on to now we work on the verbs. So we want there's the idea of craft, build, farm, and collect. Let's see, I think that's fundamentally it. I guess you could say held. Let's change the word held to equip. Right, there we go. Oh, right, yeah, I'll save this in a second. Right, so we've stripped apart the nouns and the verbs. So we can already make some assumptions based on this as to the relationship of these objects. So if I extend this out and put this here. So when this is Enterprise Architect, you don't need to use this to do what I'm going to do here. But just to show you quickly what it can look like. So we create a class of each of these things. So we want item, player, world, resource. We'll just do building. Just thinking, is there anything else I can do? I think that's there. We'll keep it fairly straightforward for now. So, we have these classes. These are a description of what something is. So the name is essentially arbitrary. You can name things anything you like in the code. It's actually doesn't matter at all unless you're actually trying to understand how it all works, but you'll name them something reasonably close to what they actually are. And you also find you might break these down a bit more, or and extend them, make them more generic. But for now, we can make a few assumptions about how this works based on this description. So, for example, in the verbs, there's build, craft, farm, collect, and equip. Well, currently, and I don't know why my view isn't showing it. It's been a while since I've had to do the... No. Damn, sorry, I've lost my... Oh, it's up there for some reason. Okay, don't worry. Oh, whatever. Right, sorry. So we want to add these as capabilities for the player, because we know from our description that the player can gather, craft, build, and farm. So we obviously want to add that to capabilities that the player can do. Now, things that people can do are operations. So these are, well, your functions, operations, methods, they're all words meaning the same thing. It's a capability a class has. So in our case, we can craft, craft, build, farm, collect, and equip. Okay, so that's great. So the player, we've now have some basis. We know the player can do these things. However, we do also have an NPC, which I have on here. Now, the NPC and the player should, by our definition, have similar bits of functionality. They should be capable of some things in the same way. And the way you approach this is you make a base class that both of these inherit from. Now, in the Unreal Engine, they're called character classes. So we now have this concept of a character. Now, we want an NPC to be able to hold items. So our player can equip items, therefore so should our NPC. Our NPC should also be able to do so. So we move the equip onto this base class, and then they're in object-oriented code. So you inherit from another class. So what we're saying here is the player class is one of these, and it will therefore have the ability to equip items. And then the NPC is also one of these classes. So we can do the same here. And then this implies that these take on everything that this has. Now, in order to actually equip items, it therefore implies that items need to be stored against something in data, we need a means of collecting them together and associating them with something. And in this case, that becomes an attribute. And because the player and the NPC can both equip items, it seems reasonable that the character class will also be able to, will be the place that you hold this information. So we create something called items, and it is going to be of type item. There we go. Now there's different ways of defining things like this, but this is a common way people should know. There we go. So what we're saying here is the character has an attribute of items, which is this symbol is typically used to represent an array. There's other ways of displaying it on here, but this means there will be a one-to-many relation, a zero-to-many relationship of items and character. So this immediately creates a relationship between these two. So we can actually represent this on here, I believe. So this is the source has zero-to-many, and I believe it's something like that. Oh, hang on, I've done this wrong. Give me a second. I actually think this is blank. Is that right? Oh, I've done it the wrong way around. Anyway, whatever. In any case, the sorry about this. This should be this is the multiplicity. This is defining the way in which these two relate to each other. And for some reason, I inevitably always get these mixed up in the wrong way around. Right. So what we're saying is a character has 0, and star means infinite amount, but you can actually define that amount specifically. So you could say 0 to 50, for instance, of this. So a character can have anywhere between 0 and now 50 items. And this is a constraint that you can apply on the relationships of classes. So I'll try and go more in depth with this later, but this is hopefully a decent overview of how you go from your textual descriptions to actually the starts of structuring the design. I intend to flesh all of this out and then have a more in-depth video that covers how to do this in full, but this is probably a reasonable introduction to it for people who've never encountered it before. So thanks for watching, and I will move on to the next bit, hopefully sometime this week.